Do you miss the 1980s? I used to think I did, but I don't think I do. What I really miss is the life we had because of the things that we didn't have. I'm talking about smartphones, social media, the internet. You weren't available every minute of every day to everybody. And when that changed, something happened to us. I'm 65, so I've been lucky enough to have lived in two very different worlds. And the more I compare the two, the more I realise what I actually do miss. Now, there's an obvious problem with all of this. I was young back then. Of course I remember those years fondly, and I'm sure some of what I'm feeling is definitely nostalgia. But this isn't about being 20 again. It's about how simple life felt back then. You could leave home for the day and nobody could get hold of you. Think about how strange that must feel for today's 20-odd-year-olds. I have this very clear memory of being 20. 5 lads crammed into my mate's mum's car, going off to spend Sunday afternoon in the nearest big town, and that was Harrogate. It was about, 20 miles away. And what did we do all day? We larked about, we played mini golf, we went to the pub, we chatted to girls, we tried to pull. Unsuccessfully, I might add. And I left home about midday. I got back about 8 o'clock in the evening. I had work the next morning. And for those 8 hours, my parents had absolutely no idea what I was doing or how they could get hold of me. And you know what? They didn't bat an eyelid. There were no text messages flying in. There were no "where are you? What time will you be coming home?" There was no location tracking. No "let me know when you get there." I'd gone out. I'd be back later, and that's all there was to it. And I don't remember thinking at the time, wow, look at all this freedom I've got. Because it wasn't unusual. It was perfectly normal. Today, I think they call it being offline or even off-grid. And there was something else you didn't have. You didn't know what everybody else was doing either. Your friend could be having the greatest holiday of their life, and you wouldn't know about it until he came home. The whole experience wasn't aired on Instagram day by day. You didn't see his drunken photos until he got home, had them processed at Boots, and showed you them in the pub afterwards. And somehow we survived. But there was a consequence to not knowing. We had far less to compare our own lives with. You could have a completely ordinary Saturday with your mates. Go into town, have a pint, maybe you'd watch the football, Leeds United in my case, and nobody was showing you 500 other people apparently having a much better Saturday than you were having in some far-flung exotic location. You weren't constantly being shown where you could have gone, what you could have bought, what you could have eaten, what you could have looked like with a bit more effort in the gym, and who you could have been if you just worked a bit harder. Your life was mostly what was in front of you, and you had less of almost everything. There was less choice for sure. There was definitely less stuff, a lot less entertainment, and without the internet and the smartphone, less convenience. Now, let's be clear, less isn't necessarily better. I'm not going to sit here talking to a camera with an iPhone in my pocket, a laptop computer on my desk, half a dozen streaming services available to me, and pretend I want to go back to 1985. Because I don't, although, it has to be said, it was a great year. Dire straits, money for nothing. Exactly. But what I do remember is what it was like when there was less. With 4 channels on the television, BBC One, BBC Two, ITV3 and newly launched Channel 4, you found something to watch, which was rare, or you turned it off and went to the pub. If a shop didn't have what you wanted after you browsed through it, you went to another shop and bought something else instead. or you just bought nothing at all. If you wanted to listen to a particular song, you couldn't just jump on Spotify. If you didn't have it in your record collection, you couldn't listen to it. And if you were bored, well, you found something to do, or just stayed bored. There was not an infinite supply of something else waiting to replace whatever it was that had failed to hold your attention. And I wonder whether that did something to your expectations, because you didn't expect every moment of your life to be entertaining. And then there's something else that I remember. You experienced things without recording them for posterity. I think about my first date with my wife. I was 22. I picked her up from her parents' house. In my pride and joy, a white 1977 Ford Capri. I even opened the car door for her. How chivalrous of me. We drove to a pub in the very next village, 2 miles away, and we sat there and we talked for hours. And when it got to closing time, we went back to her house. Her parents had gone to bed about 10 o'clock, and they couldn't care less their daughter was on their own with a stranger. And we sat talking until midnight. There were no selfies, no check-in, no photographs of the drinks we had, no posting on Instagram saying first date. Nobody else knew we were there or what we were doing, and nobody else needed to. It was just our first date. And there's a lovely little twist to that story. I married that girl, and 13 years later, we bought a house in that very same village with that same pub to raise our baby son. And I went back to that pub many, many times, but I've never forgotten the first time, despite there not being a single photo existing to mark the occasion. For me, the experience was more than enough. And I think that's what I've been trying to put my finger on. When I talk about missing the 1980s, I don't really miss the 1980s as such. I miss how life felt when it was real. And I need to explain what I mean by real. I mean when being somewhere meant you were 100% present there. Not somewhere else at the same time because you're on your phone, checking a message or reading the news, scrolling Instagram and looking around at everybody else with their fake lives. Not recording the moment, not thinking about how the moment might look to people who aren't even there. And not just that, they probably couldn't give a toss anyway. You were just there, present in the moment. 5 lads in a car, a pretty girl sitting next to you in a pub, Dire Straits on the radio, a Saturday afternoon, a boring Sunday. Life was real and simple. And this is where I think it gets interesting, because technology has made life better in so many ways. Faster, easier, more connected, more convenient. And I wouldn't want to give up any of that. But I do think we made a trade. Some would say with the devil. And I'm not sure we noticed what we were giving away in that trade. Yes, we gained connection, but we lost our ability to disappear. We gained convenience, but we lost patience. We gained almost infinite choice, but we made it harder to be satisfied with what we already have. And we gained access to everybody else's life on Instagram. But maybe made it harder to stay inside our own contented. And perhaps that's why you look back, not because everything was better back then. It wasn't. It wasn't perfect. And not because you want to be 25 again, although that wouldn't be bad. And not because smartphones and the internet have necessarily ruined everything. You look back because you're old enough to remember what existed before the trade. And you, like me, are in the rather unusual position of having lived on both sides of it. Now, you can't go back. Of course you can't. And I'm sure I'd even want to. But maybe you can bring a little of that former world into this one. Leave the phone in your pocket sometimes. Go somewhere without recording it. Make yourself uncontactable for just a single day. Do nothing in those boring moments when you're standing in line. And don't check what everybody else is doing. Who cares about them anyway? Just be 100% present in the moment. Maybe the thing you miss about the 1980s or the 1970s or the 1960s, if that was your decade, wasn't the decade itself. It was something else. Please share. I would love to know. When you look back at life before smartphones and the internet, what do you actually miss? Let me know in the comments. And if this video resonated with you, watch this one next. It's why you need to be bored. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.